Hello. Hi, good morning. Good morning, how are you? My sincerest apologies for the late start. As I mentioned earlier on, with the initial people who had arrived at 9 o'clock, we faced some technical issues and some of our speakers have been caught up in traffic and have not arrived yet. But we have enough to start. I'm curious as to why everyone has chosen to be on this side. It will look very odd. Oh, it's close to food! If I could please be a bother and ask you to just, some of you to just, the ones right at the back, just try and fill out these spaces. If it's something you're right, right? Yeah, I think you're right. Good morning, my name is Ora Kawatsarua. I am the Managing Director and Founder of AfriDigital, and I'm also going to be your moderator for today. Welcome to our talk. As all of you know, this is on the future of education. This is a subject that is not only dear to my heart, but I feel is probably one of the most important conversations we should be having at the moment. Some of you were present at our last talk, which was focused on the future of education, the future of work, apologies. I think on the discussion of the future of work, it was fantastic. We discussed about what AI and blockchain and what all the fourth industrial revolution and creativity, what it all means and what kind of jobs will be there. And it was wonderful, and halfway through the discussion we discovered, but we are not training our children or even our adults for this future that is already being realized. And it became very apparent that the conversation that should follow should be on the state of our education sector and how we're going to build it and grow it going forward and how we have to change it, because I think it's a fact that it needs to change. I share the statistic a lot, but 65% of children in primary school right now will have jobs that do not exist when they finish. By the time they get to grade 7, those jobs will probably have doubled the ones that do not exist. So we're in a very dangerous place where we have children who are learning things that are irrelevant to what they're going to need when they leave school. Our current universities as well are not teaching current future skills. Coding is not compulsory. For media and journalism, they do not teach online editing, for example. Even currently, the Herald is an online editor. These are skills that we need at the moment. They're not taught how to build a website. They're not taught the basics that we need unless you're studying IT. As you may know, technology is no longer just about the IT department or studying computer science. Technology now spans from agriculture to fashion. It is applied everywhere. So it is no longer a topic. It is now integrated into everything that we do, and so it is relevant to everybody. So I'm aware that there's very different sectors here with us today, so I'm really glad for the diversity. And I'd like to officially welcome you, because I didn't actually say welcome. So welcome. Please give yourselves a round of applause for being here. And I'm not going to waste any more of your time. And I'm going to ask our guest of honor today is somebody who I respect very deeply. Now, I don't think he remembers, but there was a time I was on a special date at Sopranos. And I was sitting there, and behind me I heard this voice, and I was like, I know that voice. And I saw him walk in, and I was like, oh my God, it's the professor. And I sat there, and I completely distracted. My date was very sad because I was no longer paying attention to our wonderful, scintillating conversation. And I was saying, there's a man who's sitting at the table behind us who's probably one of the greatest minds in our country, but is the least celebrated as far as I'm concerned. Very few people understand what Professor Rukuni has contributed, not only to our education sector, but to agriculture, even in peacekeeping. He has been integral in a silent shadow behind almost each and every important organization in this country, including our own government. So please help me to welcome, if you don't mind sitting to give your opening remarks, our guest of honor, Professor Mandivamba.
So much, Laura, and greetings. Well, should have brought my mother because she won't agree with you. She always tells me I'm not that good. I try hard. But thanks so much for this comment. So you see, here is what the problem is with our education and why the fourth industrial revolution is something that we have to think through much more carefully. Let me just talk about three what I believe are important differences between us, the aspiring middle class, and the real innovators in the world. First is that we like to live in comfort. We like things that make us just feel so comfortable. Real innovators prefer discomfort. They prepare to be challenged all the time. Second difference is that, you see, we generally live beyond our means. Once you've got a good education and you've got a salary, the next thing you're thinking of is basically how to get all the things you can afford and eventually get them. And you live far above your own means, which now means your capacity to innovate is reduced further. Third, and most probably, sorry. Now, the thing is this. If you look at you and me, we tend to be comfortable in our professions and knowledge. When we get a job, we work hard to earn anything. Well, real thinkers don't work to earn money. They work to learn so that they can do even more. And this is where our educational system has collapsed. I know I'm part of the problem, professor for more than 20 years, and I know some of it was training people wrongly, because really the real world we're living in, especially in Africa, needs fresh thinking. So the fourth industrial revolution, if you relate it to education, because education for me is the DNA of society. Okay, this is where you recreate society. This is where where necessary, you press the refresh button, because you are not producing for your own society the kind of citizen that will create this new society. And in our case, if we're going to go with the fourth industrial revolution with a lot of gusto, don't forget the first, the second, and the third industrial revolutions. We have to build on those. You can't jump those steps. In the case of Zimbabwe, we love to jump these stages. We just think we're going to end up there. So my last point is this, then, about the third to the fourth industrial revolution. I've been selling a model, not so successfully, in a number of African countries, but recently I sold the model reasonably well with the South Africans, because they're struggling much more than we are in trying to figure out how they're going to get to the next stage. So let me give you a few statistics so that you can understand where the fourth industrial revolution comes in for them and us. South Africa, we've got 57 million South Africans. Only 7 million pay taxes in South Africa, out of 57 million. 55% of all South Africans cannot afford 3 meals a day. And yet it's an upper middle income. So they're in a deep middle income trap. You think you're going somewhere, but you're not going anywhere. The bottom line is the domestic market is too small to grow the manufacturing sector. So you have to find ways of growing that domestic market. The most successful countries in the world today, United States and India, they consume almost all their consumer products. Okay, seriously. I mean, you go to the US, they don't export trivial things like cornflakes. We just demand it from them, but if they could consume all of them, they would. In fact, last time I was in DC with a South African friend, and I agree with him that South African wines are the best in the world. but he found this American wine which is so good. He was keen to take some of it back to South Africa. He said, I was even what this stuff. He Googled, he found the company in California, phoned them, and said, this midnight wine is, I'd like to import some in South Africa. They said, where? Export. We don't, I mean, listen, we don't even transport our wine to the wholesalers and retailers. They come here to collect. We can't satisfy the domestic market. The Americans drink all their wine. The South Africans export all their wine. Let me tell you. And then we did a bit of research and find that the American wine industry is the largest in the world. South Africa is number 9 on the list. But you can find the South African wine bottle in every country. Then you think you're progressing. But your people at home can't afford 3 goods. They are unemployed. The domestic market in South Africa is too small. Now the domestic market is not good. In Africa, we don't define middle class the same way. It should contribute to that one. Because if you don't mass produce raw material and then mass produce it within 50 to 100 kilometers, you are losing the most important economic growth. It's when you mass produce raw material and mass manufacture it. In the case of Zimbabwe, small towns are growing faster than the bigger towns. I passed through Chifu yesterday, it's sprawling. That's the market. Instead of exporting maputi and all these snack foods from Muhammad Musa all the way to Lotito, they should be manufactured in villages and townships. And they're importing them back to Harare. That's how you grow the economy. The 4th industrial revolution is how to make it easy for information to flow, for knowledge to flow, for people to be able, in a township, produce and manufacture something. To have the knowledge to manage things, to have the knowledge to register things. Because at the end of the day, capital is information. Capital is not money in the pocket. It's information. It's the ability for somebody way out there in your small businesses to be known, to be registered within the governmental system, to be registered within the financial services system, to be able to be known sufficiently by your market. That's capital. Thank you so much.
If I could borrow you for a few minutes. A gentle, actually not a reminder because I didn't say it, so it can't be a reminder, is it? We're live streaming this event. I told you on email. You didn't read your emails with the 4th industrial. So we're live streaming this event, which means that there is Wi-Fi. Yay, who doesn't love Wi-Fi? So we're very proud to say that today our anchor sponsor for our event today is Mandivamba. They've made our event possible today, and they have also sponsored some super fast Wi-Fi. I had the technical guys like shouting in my ear that you have the fastest Wi-Fi in the whole of Zimbabwe right now. So please take advantage of the fastest Wi-Fi in the whole of Zimbabwe right now here at the Afro-Digital Future of Education talk. So the name of the Wi-Fi is Mandivamba Afri-Dig, and the password is Mandivamba, spelled like that, all small letters. So please take advantage, please tweet. Our handle is @AfriDigital, ZW, and then we're also on Facebook and everywhere else. I'd also encourage the speakers, if you are on Twitter, please say your Twitter handle so that people can tag you, or at least your company handle, if you don't. Okay. It's okay, I guess don't want to. So please share your handle. Professor, thank you so much for that insight. I would like to ask a quick question before we move on to our first speaker. Having seen what's happening in the other countries in terms of how they're trying to develop and move forward into the 4th Industrial Revolution, where do you think Zimbabwe stands? Would be the first part of the question. And secondly, how important, and I know it's important, but I would like to understand your reasoning as to why, how important is how we educate ourselves going to be and how fast we develop?
So where we are, is, so let's put it this way. We are the most literate population of society on the continent, including North Africa. So that is a huge advantage, but becomes a disadvantage because on the digital front, we are not where we are supposed to be in terms of infrastructure, and because our economy is not firing yet, it also then reduces the scope of value from it. So I think when you educate somebody the way we educate ourselves, and then you are boxed into a limited learning and limited exchange, you become very conservative. So Zimbabweans, we're a double-edged sword. The most educated on the continent, but at the same time we then become the most conservative. Some aspects of conservatism are fine, like we're not as violent as we could be, because when you're a bit educated, you just don't go on the street and start smashing things. But I can tell you places where that happens just like that. But then open-mindedness, because there's no absolute truth on anything in life. Don't be fooled by your professors and your pastors and your politicians. Truth is transitory. Truth is temporary. Okay. You have to keep moving with it. Tomorrow, what's true today is gone tomorrow. So the digital advantage is to make it possible to learn faster and to apply faster and keep pushing the boundaries of the truth. I can't remember what your second question was. I'm too old. The hard drive is just worn out. Sorry about it. Yeah, it is. No more spare parts.
How important is education in this process?
Like I said earlier, education is the DNA of society. Unfortunately, we treat education as preparing to go and get a job. If you don't repair your DNA on a daily basis, you die young. You know, it's simple, it's epigenetics. So our educational system, unfortunately at this moment, has no capacity to regenerate itself. And we're irrelevant here, here's how we become relevant. We really have to figure out how to industrialize our society our own way. We cannot industrialize Zimbabwe the way the Americans did it, or the British, or the Australians. Honestly, we can't, because everything happened backwards. Okay, all the towns that were built here were built as administrative centers, not as manufacturing centers. In Europe, every big city was built as a manufacturing center. That's how they grew through economic growth. Every little town here is just commercial administrative center. We should be manufacturing. Okay, so our education is not preparing us for the industrial revolution sufficiently, because if we don't go back to primary production and primary manufacturing and primary consumption of what it is that makes you good, healthy, both in your stomach and your soul, then fourth industrial revolution becomes a bit of a pipe dream, and then we keep buying other people's dreams. Well, in Africa, we have to dream for ourselves, okay? But I can tell you, 99% of the time, we're living other people's dreams. These are dreams left by other people, and we're still trying to remanufacture them for us. It's not going to work. The biggest advantage is being African. There's no bigger advantage in the world today than being ourselves. Because at the end of the day, when you sell, the biggest value you get is when you sell your culture. It's not when you sell a product. It's when somebody goes and buys McDonald's, which is crap. But you think it's the greatest thing in the world. But you are buying into something which is cultural. You just want to be part of that culture.
Thank you, Professor. Please, thank you. Another round of applause for Professor Rukuni. I'm not going to teach my daughter that truth is temporary, because we might not win that department. But I think I understand. Very profound words coming from a professor. Our current education system is not getting us ready for the reality that is. I would like to welcome our first speaker. So, dear speakers, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, speeding through your presentations as best as you can without losing the essence of what it is you need to say. I know it's not your fault, but I appreciate your patience and your understanding. I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Mukwasi, who happens to be the director of PADA platform, and I'm not going to preempt it because she's going to explain everything that they do. This is a case study of what it looks like to take fourth industrial revolution, okay, it's called Industry 4, like Industry 4 tools and things that are typically associated with Industry 4 and applying them at a community level and seeing how it works and how it impacts the community. So please help me welcome Ms. Karen from PADA.
Good morning. Morning. Okay, as Ora said, I'm Karen Mukwasi, the director of the PADA platform. So PADA platform, and no, it's not an acronym. Oh, my Twitter handle is at Farai 81 and at PADA platform. Okay, so a lot of people always ask me, how did you come up with PADA? And I think it took us, I don't know, it took us a few nights trying to figure out what are we going, because we had been running an initiative that was called the Deaf Zimbabwe Africa. We was really coding skills for young women and girls. But then we wanted to make it bigger and embrace other things. So then we were thinking, what was happening when we were playing PADA? That was the place that we claimed as our space, would literally go onto the street, will draw our PADA, and you'd actually have to, you couldn't just walk over our PADA when we were playing. So that was us claiming space. It was about sisterhood, because that's where we all met. It was also about identity, because if you had to jump, and so we're thinking these are the kind of skills that we wanted to impart using media and ICT, but these are the skills that we did PADA. And then we had something that was called Chikokoko for anyone who's ever played PADA, which is, about young women celebrating their achievements. And that's the first time we had to celebrate our achievements, because then you stand there and say, Chikokoko, and celebrating our achievements. So we ended up with the PADA platform. So basically what we do at the PADA platform is we are running an initiative where we're teaching coding, digital literacy skills, and we've also embraced gaming as one of our teaching methods. And then so the digital literacy, of course, we went in, we wanted to just start with advanced computer skills, but we actually found that children, we study, because we work in high density areas mostly, and we've recently started working in rural areas as well. We realized that they had ICT, they were writing the high school exam, but some of the schools did not even have computers. So it was just the theory of computing. So we needed to first teach them the practical computing skills. And then from there, we started with the coding. And I think for some people, like, but why? I remember walking into an office and I was asked, but do you want all the young girls in Zimbabwe to be computer programmers now? And then you're thinking, no, but coding is not only for software engineers. There's so many areas that we are applying it now. Journalists are using Python to analyze data. The scholars are using machine learning. It's a whole revolution, like saying, and you will get to a time where it's a skill that's going to be necessary for different professionals. So we just wanted to teach this coding. We also wanted them to gain the advantages of learning computer coding, which we believe learning 21st century skills. So our program is an after-school program. So we're thinking, why computing? Because then we realized that inequalities, the internet was called the great equalizer, but is it really the great equalizer? That's not. It's creating inequalities, because now we've got children who are constantly connected to the internet, and we've got children who do not even have access to the devices that can connect them to the internet. So if education cannot reach inequalities, then is it really feeding into development in this country? So we were also thinking that we wanted to bridge the gender technology gap, one, and two, we also wanted to bridge the gap that's really about, that has been caused by urban poverty, because when we started working in Harare. So that's why we started the first PADA club in Zimbabwe with students from There's a high one with students from Herentals, with students from St. Mary's, and then we've been growing the program since then. And then so you're thinking about what are 21st century skills? You find yourself with children who are still learning. In school, it's 20th century skills. You learn to conform, you learn to comply. You go into the workplace, those are the two things that you're doing. But is that going to take us into the 21st century? We are now talking about the 4 C's. We're talking about collaboration, we're talking about creativity, communication, critical thinking. Because we are at a position where we've even sent people who are not thinkers into parliament to formulate our policies. They go there, they do their best to comply, they conform, and we end up with policies that do not benefit human beings. But what if we then start teaching young people to be critical thinkers? If we start teaching them to, Prof was talking about mass production happening in the villages. And I was thinking that's human-centered design thinking right there. Because now we've got Harare that is overpopulated, nothing is working in Harare. Who's impacted? It's the human beings. Whoever decided that everyone should come to Harare did not have the human being in mind. They had capital in mind, they needed the slaves to feed the capital. So we're thinking if critical thinkers are in parliament, then they're going to start thinking about solving. Because if you're a critical thinker, you're solving problems, you're solving puzzles. You're not talking about problems. Because as much as we can talk about problems, we are not coming up with solutions. How do we work together? Collaboration. That's been one of the issues that has been impacting us very negatively in Zimbabwe. We've not really mastered teamwork. Have we been creative in solving our problems? We've got people saying, oh, but we can't really talk about the 4th industrial revolution now. We haven't really, we don't have electricity. How are we going to have an industrial revolution? We're not being creative. We're not thinking about what can we do to prepare this country for the 4th industrial revolution. We are not going to stop it. All that's going to happen is we're just going to end up where we are right now, where the rest of the world has left us behind. Because we've just adapted to that model that we've had since the 80s. And then so we are looking at, even when we're talking about the 21st century skills, what are they going to feed into? You're now thinking they have to create information literacy, because we've been giving students information and we've been teaching them where to get information for themselves. Have we been teaching students that have global and cultural awareness? Are the students that are coming out of Zimbabwe right now able to just go and sit in an office in Sweden and work? I think we have to be asking ourselves those questions. Are the students, that's work ready in the 21st century? So then a lot of people are always asking me, but why gaming? I think for us, we chose gaming. I'm an avid gamer myself, and the only time I ever had an opportunity to be in a classroom as an educator, I was teaching computer science. I was bored, my students were bored. I think they were even more bored because there was a lot of theoretical computer systems design. So, but then the best thing that I had was I had the computer lab to myself. So I played pinball, broke my own records. But then when I was gaming, I actually realized, why do I concentrate? What skills am I getting? And then you find that with the young women, they were told, it's, gaming, it's the boys who are gaming. You go into the gaming dance, it's the boys who are there. Girls, they're not really encouraged to game. But already, that's an inequality right there. So for them, we choose the kind of games that, that teach them to adapt. Yeah, because gaming is simulation. Even before you can drive a car, you've driven it so many times. And as an organization, Farai is an organization run by 2 feminists. Obviously, we're teaching feminism, and we're even asking them to analyze the games. Really, is Mortal Kombat speaking to what you believe in as a young woman? Are you going to play God of Wars? And so they even start researching the kind of games that speak to what they believe in as they come into their own as women, as young women. Games like Celeste, that are about human interaction, because they're games that, that are about obstacles, actually games that feed positively into the minds of young people. And then I think the last thing that we also, when we are talking about especially using technology for education. Because we're doing it in a different way, but it can be done in other ways in schools. We're thinking, how are we going to make it? Is it going to feed into inclusivity? Because we find there's a lot of research now about using artificial intelligence for learners with special needs. We are going into the fourth industrial revolution, which is really, machines. So what is going to be that skill, that human skill that's going to stand out? It's empathy, because machines will never learn empathy. It doesn't matter how much we're going to create Alexa, one robot, at the end of the day, machines will have no empathy. So our education system has to teach our children empathy. So which is also what we try to do at PADA. We show them, sometimes we screen films for them, and we just want them to learn human empathy. And then the last thing, human-centered design. If really we are going to be talking about designing systems for people, then they have to have people at heart. Then those systems have to be about the people at the end of the day. And so I end on this note. We cannot solve our problems the same way we were thinking when we created them. And Einstein actually said that, because a lot of quotes have been attributed to him, but he actually didn't say it. So we are at a point where I think we are really trying to solve our problems the way we created them. And unfortunately, we are feeding that into the next generation. We are taking them right there into the classroom, because we all admit, Zimbabwe, we've got a problem. But are we thinking differently? Are we teaching? We are still teaching learners the way we were taught, but is that going to be relevant? If you're teaching my 10-year-old the way I was taught in the 80s, are we really preparing them for the future? So, which is what at PADA we've taken it into the community, and we are hoping to complement what the schools are doing.
Thank you. I have a very, very quick question. Don't worry, this will go to everyone. This is my dad. But during the panel discussion, I really don't have a voice. But I have a quick question just so that we have an understanding. I think it's amazing what PADA is doing. How has the community received it? How have the parents received you teaching their girls how to game? Spending hours on the internet or spending hours in front of the laptop. How has the community accepted it, or has it been a challenge?
Initially, the community did not accept it, because the questions that they would ask us, is it going to make you pass the school? Are they teaching you what's in the syllabus? But then now, I think now we've reached a point where we've interacted with the parents of the girls who come to PADA, and they're even at a point where they sometimes text to say when are the girls coming next to PADA, because they've realized that the change that's happening in the young girls in terms of confidence, in terms of even thinking bigger than they used to think before they came. So
how long did that take? How long did it take until they came on board?
And it took 3-4 trainings for the girls, and then them going back home, and because since we're working, some of the minors, we interact a lot with the parents, and so they'll go home, talk about what they were doing, and that it was just not really sitting at a computer, but they had a social space where they were learning about each other, they were interacting with each other, which is better than them maybe just moving around, because there's not much entertainment for young women in the high-density suburbs. There's not much they can do. They move around, they stay at home, and they really do nothing, maybe just domestic work. So I think it didn't take more than 3 months.
Okay. It's not more than 3. So it's about 3 months to get the community on board. And what age group are your girls?
13 to 18 at the moment.
13 to 18. Okay, interesting case study. Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. We'll call you back up again for our panel discussion. So I hope you're taking notes. We're going to speed through this. Okay. Our next speaker is one of our partner, which is exciting. But they are also, I really like what they wrote here, which is to dominate market through ITC solutions. I like to call them the quiet big brother, because they're not as in your face as other people. I'm going to keep but they are doing, I'm very privileged to be aware of some of the work that they're doing, and they're actively trying to not just create fast internet, but to change the digital economy and to influence how we interact online and how we operate in the digital space. So our next speaker comes from Utande. He's the general manager, and it's Mr. Ignatius Mpako.
Thank you very much, Maura. I would like to acknowledge previous speakers. I've learned about the 4 C's, and in the spirit of being creative, I'll present while I'm standing. If you can allow me to stand this side. Thank you very much, Prof. You touched on a very important element. I was also reflecting as I was preparing my notes that from the time I acquired my university degree, I don't remember the last time I was doing serious learning. It was also because it's in the spirit of trying to get education so that you get a job, and once you get a job, get a nice car, you get a nice car, that's the end of it. But I'm glad that today we are discussing about the future of education, which does not require that, which requires people to continuously learn. Just to start the conversation, is there someone within the audience who is brave enough to share with me what is Bitcoin? Thank you very much. I think thanks for the answer. It confirms. Oh, there's someone who's brave enough to share. Thank you.
You say you are asking for cryptocurrency.
Yes.
It's an intangible, exchangeable medium of value that you can't trace it. It's not regulated, but you buy shares, and certain countries like South Africa, they trade in America. Russia is still conservative about it because it needs to be regulated. As you buy shares, so-called shares or coins of value, currently it's valuable and you can exchange commodities or whatever you want. But in certain countries it's not acceptable as a medium of exchange because it has the risk that is intangible, it's not physical, and it might collapse, crash.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, you have just confirmed what I have here. If you are to look at age, definitely, with all due respect, you are older than myself. And my other colleague who just said, Atsat Tamboyona, he has never seen it or she has never seen it. But what we are talking about here is the future of education where it does not have to be part of the syllabus at primary or at university level for you to learn about cryptocurrency. It's the attitude of oneself to then continuously learn about what is happening. That's the future of education, in my view. And why is it it's important for us to evolve the education of Zimbabwe? I'm sure I would love to contextualize it. The needs of the students are evolving. The cost of education is going up. I've got a lot of colleagues who are actually having to ask their students to come out of the current schools to then join the schools which are less costly at this point in time, because education is becoming expensive. Learning is a lifelong endeavor. At some point we then say, after my degree, I've stopped learning because I've acquired what can allow me to earn a job. But the future of education requires us to continuously learn and acquire what the environment is posing at us. Let me go on to the outline of my presentation. I'll talk about education, technology, I'll talk about the future of education, the role of ICT, and I'll talk about the involvement of London Tande in the evolution of education. You can go to the next slide. If you can play that video for me, short video, I'm sure we've got a few lessons from it. I'm sure we can do it. Okay. I'm sure we can do it out of volume, it's fine. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll stick to my 10 minutes. 10-minute principle. I'm not so sure if it's relevant in the future of education. But some of the key themes which are coming out of that video is the future of education. We are not going to be emphasizing on the aspect of race. Most people have got excuses in terms of, oh, I don't have a degree because I'm working at TM, I don't have time to then go to school, etc., etc. But the future of education, that excuse will not be relevant anymore. I'm sure we are already there, but some of us have not realized there is now online degrees, there are online courses that one can enroll, and you can do that at your own pace, you can do that at your own time. So it means after work, you can still do your degree, even at 9 p.m. Education technology, what is that? There are a number of definitions regarding education technology, but the one that I like is a practice that refers to any form of teaching and learning that makes use of technology. Before, I'm sure when you would see a computer or a desktop in a class for ECD or grade 1, grade 5, it was more of a toy. But is it still the case today? The future says no. It's now a tool for education. And that is very important for us to embrace. We are saying as we go into the future, change is constant. The future is bringing change to us, and we need to embrace it. What is that change to us in terms of education? We are employing ICT tools to learn. We are employing ICT tools to deliver information. I'm sure the and even to retrieve this information. Next slide, please. Technology has made learning easy, interactive, and interesting. So what are the benefits of us embracing the ICT tools in the future of education? I'll talk about increased collaboration. We have an assignment. It's no longer important for us to meet at Africa Unit Square and discuss the topic. We can collaborate using ICT tools. There is 24/7 learning, access to e-learning platforms. I've talked about our young brothers who probably have got a busy working schedule and have got an excuse for not learning or advancing their learning. But right now, there are online platforms which allows you to interact with your instructor, to interact with other students. So it's no more a matter of time. You can learn 24/7. Personalized education experience. Here I'm talking about the slow learners and the fast learners. We are going into the future where an exam for an average student and an exceptional student are going to be different. Right now we have got one examination paper that tests all the guys, and you can then be failed and be regarded as someone who is useless in the community because you are in the same class with someone who is exceptionally good. But the future of education, we want to separate those average students have got potential to contribute in certain segments of the economy, while those excelling and those who are bright can also contribute in that in a different space. Paperless classroom, printing budget. Gone are the days where we have to print, photocopy, but we are talking of electronic content. Accessing that electronic content, you don't need to buy the hard goods. I'm sure as I was growing up, we're having a challenge where the school does not have enough copies for every student to be able to go home and read, etc., etc. But that's not the case anymore. We all have smartphones. Who doesn't have a smartphone in here? But are we using those ICT tools for the right reasons? Do you know on that same smartphone, you can read about change management? On that same smartphone, smart cell phone, you can have an application that you can be able to do an online course. But we are busy using these ICT tools for WhatsApp. It's not bad, it's good sharing information, but I'm sure we are more on the abusing side than embracing these gadgets for more productive stuff. Classroom management tools. Okay, you can go ahead. The future of education. It is very difficult to predict the future. What is certain about the future is change. And Education 4.0, I'm sure my previous colleagues have talked about that. Change will not wait for us, but educators must find new ways to upskill and retrain. The problem, we are preparing the students for the future that we are not aware of. The next slide, in summary, the future of education. Education can be delivered anytime. Education will be personalized. Education will be delivered at any place. Enable learning anytime, anyway, I think I've talked about that. Individual learning process for each student, above average students being challenged with tasks that are difficult as compared to the students who are below average. This will enable students to learn at their own pace. I'm sure we can get some very interesting insights. If you were in my class and I'm going through this topic, it will be very difficult for me to tell that student X or student Y did not grasp this concept, and some generally would shy away from asking. But if it's an online course, you can tell by the time one has gone through a certain topic, and you can tell that Stanford is struggling with Pythagoras theorem, for instance. Next slide, please. The reason why I'm here, the role of ICT sector in improving or making the dream of the future education realized soon. I'm sure that is a very important thing, that if we delay evolving our education system, we will continue to lag behind. The ICT sector, that number one is very key with 2 stars. Provide access to stable and affordable connectivity to bridge the digital divide. Without connectivity, all what I'm talking about is a job. Currently, we are doing live streaming because there's connectivity. Online courses can only be possible if there is connectivity, be it live or on demand. Netflix is not a reality if connectivity is not there. So the future of education in Zimbabwe is not an exception, and we need connectivity. And I'm very proud to be working for Tande, which is one of the leading service providers, to develop and make sure that as a country we have got stable and affordable connectivity for our citizens to enable online learning, to enable online streaming. The second one, which is very key, infrastructure to allow collection, storage, processing, and access of electronic information. The previous speaker was talking about gaming. There is some intelligence that you can extract if someone is gaming, or there's a thought process to how a game has been constructed, and at the end of the day, probably it's about problem solving. So the point here with infrastructure, we are saying, as the ICT sector, we are supposed to ensure that there is the right infrastructure for gaming to take place. The reason why most people probably are not into gaming is because you need a machine with the right spec for you to be doing gaming, unless maybe you're doing Pac-Man and those other small gaming. So obviously, as a country, we need to have a solid data center with state-of-the-art technology. Facilitate the acquisition of applicable, cost-effective, productive ICT equipment. Research and development or import collaborative platforms, e-learning platform. I'm sure of late we have seen a number of providers coming onto the market, advertising that they will now be offering e-learning platforms. We have some which I'll not mention because we are live streaming, that have been launched but have not been able to meet the customer expectation. But we are saying as the ICT sector, that is our responsibility to enable our stakeholders to then have a stable platform which can deliver on these expectations. Whilst we then provide a connectivity platform, let's not forget that we are exposing our community to the public domain. So security is of essence. As an ICT sector, there's a responsibility as well to protect our stakeholders, to protect those students. I'm sure portals have come up with a policy in terms of consumer protection. So as the ICT sector, we are supposed to come up with firewalls, we are supposed to come up with awareness in terms of cybersecurity, cyberbullying, and protecting the electronic content that we are putting on the cloud. Promote awareness and use of ICT, I think I've talked about that. Analytics capabilities and artificial intelligence, I'm not going to there. Lastly, I hope I'm still in my 10 minutes. Thank you. Lastly, let me share with you some of the practical things that we've done in Stand Mtande to make sure that the realization of the future of education comes sooner. As Stand Mtande, why do we exist? Our purpose, we have a responsibility to enable our customers to disrupt and dominate the markets in which they operate. And education is one of our key strategic markets. What is it that we have done? We have facilitated the installation of 904 remote schools on VSAT. She was talking about remote schools going into the remote areas. And Stand Mtande, we've realized that it's one space that has not been fulfilled in terms of connectivity. We want to ensure that there is inclusive connectivity. So we have installed 904 schools on VSAT, which means now they've got internet, which means they can access the same content as students. Thank you very much. A student who is sitting in the States can access. So it's now a global village. And taking into account the fact that now those guys are connected, we still acknowledge that there is a number which is still outstanding. And what we have done as a business, we have partnered with a company called Yapi. And the reason why these schools have not been connected is not that they are arrogant or they don't know that they are supposed to be connected, but it's the issue of cost. So as a business, we've taken a step and say, guys, we need to ensure that the sign-up costs are very low. And if you come to Stand Mtande, we make sure that you don't have to pay for the CPE for you to connect onto the internet. And if you have to sign up with 24 months, we'll install that for free. So this is some of the initiatives that we have taken to make sure that the schools who appreciate the value of ICT can come on board and be able to afford the service such that the future of education comes sooner. E-learning platform. At Stand Mtande, we have partnered with InventXR, a Silicon Valley-based company, and we will be launching our e-learning platform very soon. We will be doing an official opening in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time from now with a school that we are doing a POC with. Let me just elaborate a bit on this one. We're talking of communication. I remember the 4 C's. The parent needs to interact with the school or the institution. The student needs to interact with the teacher. The teacher needs to interact with the parent. And this platform will be able to do that. There is also the aspect of ensuring that you can monitor the performance of your student, of your child, real time. And this is key for us. And we have said, as a player in the ICT, this is what we should ensure that we can provide to the community. We are also a gold partner of Sophos. Sophos being the leading security solutions provider. And the fact that we are a gold partner, it means our pricing is competitive enough. We will not connect you to the internet and leave you. We know that there are cybercrimes. We will protect your electronic resources. Lastly, we also do, before the last point, we also do video conferencing and online live meetings through our CCTV solutions and also our video conferencing solution. It means you can do face-to-face with the student. Whilst you can do a podcast, they can listen to the voice, but you also need to make sure that you are having a conversation. Already I can see some of my colleagues around are lost, but anyway, we can have a side talk after this chat. But I'm just trying to emphasize the importance of having a face-to-face in terms of interacting with the student. So our solution can also be able to ensure that happens. Lastly, the leading data center state-of-the-art infrastructure that we have at our offices. Why is this key? For you to have an online course platform, it needs to be hosted somewhere. And we have the data center with the right power, with the right server spec, even for your gaming, my sister. You can take your gaming now to our servers and make sure that you can be able to access this locally and it will perform to expectation. So we have one of the leading data center in Zimbabwe, and we believe that as a business, this is what the ICT sector must do for its citizens. Lastly, in terms of the future of education, we have to keep learning so that we can make sense of the changing world and make sense of the new emerging opportunities for us. We have to learn new things every day and learning in a different way. Before, we used to learn with charts, etc. But I was in Bulawayo last month. There's a school called Bexa. One of the key requirements for you to be accepted in, you must have a laptop. Not just a laptop, with certain minimum hardware specs which they require for their e-learning platform. Lastly, the speed of technology advancement and the speed of adopting new technology is key for us to see the realization of the new, of the future of education for our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mfando. That was a lot of information. I hope you're taking notes. I keep saying take notes. I hope you're taking notes. Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you very much. Very insightful. I'm really excited about the e-learning platform. Please do tell us, and so that we can follow and make it huge so that we know that it's going to happen. It'd be great to know what's happening. We're going to move on to our last speaker, who is Dr. Miriam Farai Siwela, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Teach For Zimbabwe. This conversation would not be complete without hearing from the teachers and speaking from a teacher's perspective. As much as education is everybody's responsibility, the ones who spend the most time with our children in the mornings and sometimes in the afternoons as well. So please help me welcome Dr. Siwela.
Wow. I just want to say, I know it was a late notice, but I just want to thank you for inviting me, because this is my space. This is where I feel like a fish in water. So I really want to thank you. Yes, where do we start? I think the previous speakers just said it all. We do have a problem. We've always known that we had a problem. And it's not just the fact that 65% are being prepared for a future which doesn't exist. There are so many other issues, and I want to go into depth about those issues. Please go forward. But I think, let me start off by just finding out, just using these 3 questions, because when you love something, when you're passionate about something, you don't even know where to start. I'll spend more than, I'm 53 right now. Of course, I don't look it. But I'll spend my life.
18,
thank you. I'll spend my life, so passionate about education. So when I'm invited and she says 10 minutes, oh my goodness, I have to try. But as a lecturer, as an educator, it's very difficult for me. Let me try.
Please
try. I'm going to use these 3 questions. I'm just going to use these questions. What is this future we're talking about? What is the future? What does it look like? Do we have a consensus? about the future that we are looking forward to, and what are these critical skills? Next, please. So, traditionally, when we describe a teacher, I think, especially for developing countries, we say our teacher is the psychologist, pastor, counselor. This is one teacher, by the way, in a classroom. Anything that goes wrong, teacher, how come my child is facing this problem? How come my child is not doing this and that? And this is exactly where the problem is in terms of developing countries, how we define this teacher. Next, please. And now you are talking, all of you, you're just talking about this fourth industrial revolution. Is this the future we are talking about? Are we all seeing this as our future? Is the future just about technology? Is the future just about preparing our children for work? Why are we preparing them for work? That's one of the questions that I want you to keep in mind. Why are we preparing them for work? Because I think we should be preparing them to create the work. Next, please. And the reason why we do not have an understanding that this particular future which we are preparing, we always keep saying, prepare them for work. We have all these statistics that are worrying us. Oh, 65% are not prepared for work. And we are still using that thinking, which is distorting exactly how we solve the problems. So we are going back to that type of thinking which says, my child has to go into the primary sector, my child has to go to the secondary, tertiary, to do what? To work. To work, that's what we're talking about. And is that what we should be saying? And us, we're all guilty as parents, as sisters, as brothers, that all we are thinking of is, and we are parroting this in our books, all the books we are reading, they are saying, what are the knowledge, skills, attitude that you need to work in a primary sector, tertiary sector, and so forth. And I'm saying, please go forward. I'm really trying to be fast. And as soon as we now start talking about the workplace, all we are saying is that, so now what are these tools that they need? And all these tools, again, they are focusing on the world of work. And that's where my problem is. They are all focusing on just saying, okay, what work is my child going to? Forward. And all we see again is just this same type of, this is what the future we're imagining. That's what we're imagining. Basic stuff. Just copying from what others have done. Next one is more or less that, okay, if we can do that. But I'm saying no, it stops right there. That type of thinking should stop right there. Now let's talk about what type of thinking I think will get us to where you are talking about. Not just for the Industrial Revolution, but even further, bridging that third gap that we have. Forward. So now, what does this future look like? I'm saying that we need to first of all understand, if we are going to have a future, we are going to perform well in the future, we need to look at this particular learner, this particular child, as a whole being, and equip this particular person holistically, so that this particular learner reaches their potential, not just potential locally anymore, but potentially where? As a global citizen. That is the first way that we have to look at the future. Not being myopic and just ride on. Who said the fourth revolution? Was it us? It wasn't even us. Obviously, because we are in the 19th century, hey, you see. But what is so important is that we need to take into account that even when we look at this future, when we close our eyes and look at this future, it has to encompass all areas of activity. economic, the social aspect. It has to look at the political activities, because you cannot work in isolation in all these spheres and then you hope to reach the future. You cannot. Forward. So what are these critical skills to make Zimbabwe great? Now, as an educator, this is the holistic picture that people talk about. But I'm just trying to say now, do you really understand this when you see it? Maybe because you've never looked at a learner holistically. We need to examine this particular holistic model to say, if a learner, we're talking about a learner as a whole being. So when you talk about, for instance, cognitive skills, we are really targeting the mind. So when we talk about gaming activities, when we talk about ICT skills, where does it fall? It all falls under that mind. The mind where you are, I loved it when Pada said, going back to the community, to give them that imagination, that creativity. That's exactly what it's all about. You are actually looking at those cognitive skills. And Utande, where are you looking at? You are also looking at the cognitive skills. I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that. That is just part of the problem. It's not the whole problem. We need to understand that any role that we are going to play must take into account that we are equipping this particular learner to be whole, to be totally whole in terms of emotions. Think about what our children are going through. Personality development in the future. What does the picture look like when our learners do not know how to develop their personalities? They don't know how their social identity, societal development, all those issues. It's not going to work. Whatever you are going to do on that cognitive level, if our emotions, we don't look at that as well, it will really affect everything we do for the fourth industrial revolution. And then what about the physical skills? We've got now, just quickly there, I can go for ages. But physical skills, that education about our body. If I tell you now that I'm a man, what will you say? Will you throw me out? But globally, they say no. Hey, this is part of the fourth industrial revolution, you see. So there are so many issues that we have to look at. There's disability issues. There's what about food that we're eating, GMOs? What about all that education? So that at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing for this learner, that education still has to be there as well. And when we look now at the morality, the spirituality, oh my gosh, that's a big one. We've got violence. I heard this morning, kids are fighting with teachers. And that's just, early marriages, dropouts. You tell me, there's so many morality issues there. I can go on there. And volitional, I want to say, Pada, that's really where you belong. That's where you're doing very well, because for you to motivate, because in our context, because we've already described the teacher as something else, we don't know in Africa that just watching a cartoon, that's motivation. Just playing Pada, that's a motivation. We don't know that just by visiting, having an exchange program, just visiting another country, twinning, that's motivation. Even having a library, that's motivation. I'm always saying to my team, why do we always have this Tom and Jerry or all these cartoons? How come we don't have, does anyone know Sambara Mfuta? Why can't we have a cartoon? Why can't we have that? Because we are the custodians of all these insect animals. But none of you, through your gaming, through your ICT, are creating these. Why are we not doing that? And guess what? From there, you create that story, while you're telling that story. From there, guess what? Someone writes books. From there, guess what? Someone gets clothes. From there, guess what? It's just that's part where we get employment. So please go ahead. So who are these teachers? Again, we have a myopic view. I'm a grade 7 teacher. And automatically, you think, oh, fourth revolution, I must also do that. Oh, teachers, things are going wrong. And I'm saying, no. What you presented today shows me you are also a teacher. What you're doing today, you are also a teacher. So we've always known that it takes a village to educate a child. And if we've known that, who are these villagers? And I'm saying as long as you're an educational stakeholder, your role is to understand what is it that you do in that particular village to aid to educating a learner. And you spoke about, I loved what you said, I was writing it down. You know, it's not about place, it's not about time, it's not about infrastructure. So if it's not, it means government can provide that as a teacher. And what you're providing, that infrastructure, you're a teacher. We don't have to be in these 4 walls to say, oh, I think I saw a teacher. When I saw a teacher, why? Because I went to the school and teacher was in front of a blackboard. No, a teacher is no longer that. So we need to redefine what we call a teacher. So all these secondary stakeholders, like the private sector, you were talking about partnering with these different stakeholders. Why? To go to a school. Why were you going to school? Are you a teacher? We must all join and say, he's not a teacher, he must get out. Is that true? Is that what we must do? He is a teacher. So as long as we have that myopic definition of a teacher, we will never move where we are. We will not, because we'll keep on expecting these roles that should be played about connectivity for education to take place, about networking, all that to take place. It must just come from me. I'm only providing part of the cognitive education, but the rest you have to provide. We have to come up as a village. Next. So just basically, I was just saying a few things there, but I think we can even say more. So please, next time you say, who is a teacher? You must point to yourself to say, I am a teacher. You are a teacher. What you're doing today is more teaching than one classroom teacher can do just standing. We need to redefine how we disseminate this information to our learners. And I think that's where our discussion should really go to. You said we are 92% literacy. That's an excellent start. If we have that 90% literacy, and we acknowledge that we are all teachers, and we acknowledge we all have roles to play, and we acknowledge that our aim is for that holistic child, then in the end, we need to assess now to say, where's the missing link for this child to be whole? Maybe psychological, maybe it's not psychological, maybe it's volitional. There's not enough motivation. I'm always saying, why do we have in this day and age children who finish school and all they do is just sit and do nothing? Why? Why are they doing nothing? And when you come to the school, you see them doing nothing. You point at me as if I'm the village. I'm not the village. So I just want to end by saying that Teach For Zimbabwe, I'm just looking at my marketing person. I was really cross with him. He left our banner. Yeah, keep looking down. Yeah. But anyway, you can catch us on Teach For, letter 4 Zim. We are part of a global organization which is in 53 countries. And unfortunately, this organization started in 1989 as Teach For All, but it never came to Africa until only 10 years ago. And this organization is really saying, we we have to go back and say, who were those leaders here? Who were you who were prefects? Who were between 21 and 35? Who were you who were school monitors? Who were you who were running sports programs? And say, after you finish now, instead of letting you go, we say, no, there's a gap. Let's now develop you into our future potential leaders. Let's give you 2 years of that development. So that if you were very good, I'm sure he was good at ICT. Have you developed anything in terms of animation, in terms of, what have you, or you just said, I got a job, that's it. So please, we are not preparing, if we are going to the 4th industrial revolution, we already got 65, one time I said 85% are unemployed. Some of the government person, they don't say more than 80 are unemployed instead. Say 60 or something like that. No, we've got over 80% of our learners who are unemployed. So the question is not that they don't have the certificate. The question is that you are telling them, prepare for the world of work. Please don't. They must prepare for the world of what? Of creativity, of starting their own companies, of innovations. I want to see those cartoons. Of those different insects. Actually, we do have ants, you know about all these cartoons. So why are we not doing it? So with that, I think, as I said, I want to tell you that the current role of a teacher is that of a superhero. If we still have that perception that this teacher is a superhero who is going to look after your child when she's got menstrual problems, look after your son when he's got issues of confidence, all those things, and you say, this teacher must do everything. That's where the problem is. A teacher is not a superhero. So let's go into this future knowing that the role of a teacher is to facilitate. I'm your teacher. I want you to come to my school and do your part of education. Professor, I also want you to come to my school and do your part. You must come to my school and do your part. I want exchange programs. I want Air Zimbabwe to give us 50% for my learners because they have to go to France, they're speaking French, they need that networking. And I want you. Do you see what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, we are all teachers. And I'm just a facilitator of teaching. Thank you.
Yes. I'm a teacher. Yes. Yes. You too. So this comes to the end of our live stream. Our live streaming section has come to its end. Thank you so much for paying attention and for watching our live stream. Please feel free to share this link. The video will stay up forever and ever and ever. So please, if you know someone who missed the talk, please share the link with them. It was an absolute pleasure to have our digital audience with us. There are a couple hundred. I need to probably go and look at I looked briefly in between trying to go to the next slide. But thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this session. We're about to move on to our panel discussion. You should have come if you wanted to be part of that. So, we'd just like to say goodbye and thank you to our live streamers. Okay, and then we're going to move on to our